Chapter 11 Part C. Ought he to relieve the family, in their present situation, of the responsibility of him as a guest, or ought he to stay on the chance that even his humble services might be of some use? He decided ultimately that the last course was perhaps the most customary and considerate course to take, in such a very peculiar case of family distress as this was. Circumstances try the metal a man is really made of. Mr. Godfrey, tried by circumstances, showed himself of weaker metal than I had thought him to be. As for the women servants excepting Rosanna Spearman, who kept by herself, they took to whispering together in corners, and staring at nothing suspiciously, as is the manner of that weaker half of the human family, when anything extraordinary happens in a house. I myself acknowledge to have been fidgety and ill-tempered. The curse Moonstone had turned us all upside down. A little before 11 Mr. Franklin came back. The resolute side of him had, to all appearance, given way, in the interval since his departure, under the stress that had been laid on it. He had left us at a gallop, he came back to us at a walk. When he went away, he was made of iron. When he returned, he was stuffed with cotton, as limp could be. "Well," says my lady, "are the police coming?" "Yes," says Mr. Franklin, "they said they would follow me in a fly. Superintendent Seagrave, of your local police force, and 2 of his men. A mere form. The case is hopeless." "What, have the Indians escaped, sir?" I asked. "The poor ill-used Indians have been most unjustly put in prison," says Mr. Franklin. "They are as innocent as the babe unborn. My idea that one of them was hidden in the house has ended, like all the rest of my ideas, in smoke. It's been proved," says Mr. Franklin, dwelling with great relish on his own incapacity, "to be simply impossible." After astonishing us by announcing this totally new turn in the matter of the Moonstone, our young gentleman, at his aunt's request, took a seat, and explained himself. It appeared that the resolute side of him had held out as far as Frising Hall. He had put the whole case plainly before the magistrate, and the magistrate had at once sent for the police. The first inquiries instituted about the Indians showed that they had not so much as attempted to leave the town. Further questions addressed to the police, proved that all 3 had been seen returning to Frising Hall with their boy, on the previous night between 10 and 11, which, regard being had to hours and distances, also proved that they had walked straight back after performing on our terrace. Later still, at midnight, the police, having occasion to search the common lodging-house where they lived, had seen them all 3 again, and their little boy with them, as usual. Soon after midnight I myself had safely shut up the house. Plainer evidence than this, in favor of the Indians, there could not well be. The magistrate said there was not even a case of suspicion against them so far. But, as it was just possible, when the police came to investigate the matter, that discoveries affecting the jugglers might be made, he would contrive, by committing them as rogues and vagabonds, to keep them at our disposal, under lock and key, for a week. They had ignorantly done something, I forget what, in the town, which barely brought them within the operation of the law. Every human institution, justice included, will stretch a little, if you only pull it the right way. The worthy magistrate was an old friend of my lady's, and the Indians were committed for a week, as soon as the court opened that morning. Such was Mr. Franklin's narrative of events at Frising Hall. The Indian clue to the mystery of the lost jewel was now, to all appearance, a clue that had broken in our hands. If the jugglers were innocent, who, in the name of wonder, had taken the Moonstone out of Miss Rachel's drawer? 10 minutes later, to our infinite relief, Superintendent Seagrave arrived at the house. He reported passing Mr. Franklin on the terrace, sitting in the sun, I suppose with the Italian side of him uppermost, and warning the police, as they went by, that the investigation was hopeless, before the investigation had begun. For a family in our situation, the superintendent of the Frising Hall Police was the most comforting officer you could wish to see. Mr. Seagrave was tall and portly, and military in his manners. He had a fine commanding voice, and a mighty resolute eye, and a grand frock coat which buttoned beautifully up to his leather stock. "I'm the man you want," was written all over his face, and he ordered his 2 inferior policemen about with a severity which convinced us all that there was no trifling with him. He began by going round the premises, outside and in, the result of that investigation proving to him that no thieves had broken in upon us from outside, and that the robbery, consequently, must have been committed by some person in the house. I leave you to imagine the state the servants were in when this official announcement first reached their ears. The superintendent decided to begin by examining the boudoir, and, that done, to examine the servants next. At the same time, he posted one of his men on the staircase which led to the servants' bedrooms, with instructions to let nobody in the house pass him, till further orders. At this latter proceeding, the weaker half of the human family went distracted on the spot. They bounced out of their corners, whisked upstairs in a body to Miss Rachel's room, Rosanna Spearman being carried away among them this time, burst in on Superintendent Seagrave, and, all looking equally guilty, summoned him to say which of them he suspected, at once. Mr. Superintendent proved equal to the occasion. He looked at them with his resolute eye, and he cowed them with his military voice. "Now, then, you women, go downstairs again, every one of you. I won't have you here. Look," says Mr. Superintendent, suddenly pointing to a little smear of the decorative painting on Miss Rachel's door, at the outer edge, just under the lock. "Look what mischief the petticoats of some of you have done already. Clear out, clear out." Rosanna Spearman, who was nearest to him, and nearest to the little smear on the door, set the example of obedience, and slipped off instantly to her work. The rest followed her out. The superintendent finished his examination of the room, and, making nothing of it, asked me who had first discovered the robbery. My daughter had first discovered it. My daughter was sent for. Mr. Superintendent proved to be a little too sharp with Penelope as starting. "Now, young woman, attend to me, and mind you speak the truth." Penelope fired up instantly. "I've never been taught to tell lies, Mr. Policeman, and if father can stand there and hear me accused of falsehood and thieving, and my own bedroom shut against me, and my character taken away, which is all a poor girl has left, he's not the good father I take him for." A timely word from me put Justice and Penelope on a pleasanter footing together. The questions and answers went swimmingly, and ended in nothing worth mentioning. My daughter had seen Miss Rachel put the diamond in the drawer of the cabinet the last thing at night. She had gone in with Miss Rachel's cup of tea at 8 the next morning, and had found the drawer open and empty. Upon that, she had alarmed the house, and there was an end of Penelope's evidence. Mr. Superintendent next asked to see Miss Rachel herself. Penelope mentioned his request through the door. The answer reached us by the same road: "I have nothing to tell the policeman, I can't see anybody." Our experienced officer looked equally surprised and offended when he heard that reply. I told him my young lady was ill, and begged him to wait a little and see her later. We thereupon went downstairs again, and were met by Mr. Godfrey and Mr. Franklin crossing the hall.